Honeywell for about 22 years.
22 years.
And of that, you have been with Honeywell Flowers, with the flour mill. How has your experience been being in the flour mills and in the group for this length of time?
Yeah. Well, it seems to me like yesterday, actually, this 22 years. The only reason that I know that many years have elapsed is when I look at my picture upon joining and what it looks like today, I say, well, okay.
Well,
okay.
I don't see any gray there.
It's not quite like 22 years. But really, I joined the Honeywell Group 22 years ago in the position of Group Managing Director. Then we had about 8 companies in the group. We decided after about 4 years that structure was not working, to have a Group Managing Director for all the businesses. My office was based in Victoria Island, and we had companies in Ibadan, in Kirikiri, Apapa, in different parts. It wasn't very easy to work that out. So upon decentralization of that group structure, the Honeywell flour mills as a business was also coming up. So that system was decentralized, that we didn't need a group managing director structure anymore. So I then went over to Honeywell Flour Mills as the pioneer CEO in 1997. Not to start the business, but to start the construction from the land which was allocated to us by Nigerian Ports Authority, there from a container to supervise the building of the factory, to supervise the installation of plant and equipment, to recruit staff, and finally, by 1998, to actually produce the first bag of flour from all that effort. So that's the way it has been, quite challenging, quite an unusual experience for any CEO in this country.
To be in charge of the startup is not an easy thing.
Startup from land to structure. And when we soon discovered that 200 metric tons was not adequate, again, while pursuing the budget and ensuring that the 200 metric tons could be fully taken and profits delivered to the owners, we were at the same time supervising further expansion and further expansion. So if we have moved from 200 to 2,610, we have done all that while dealing with budgetary requirements, you know, and making returns to the owners, including the fact that while all that was going on, we went public in 2009. And after we became a public-quoted company, we went into another major expansion, Mills E and F, which we completed in March 2013. Without detracting from the business, and in fact, seeing to it that turnover levels were exceeded and that profits were exceeded from year to year. So it's the most unusual experience, most rewarding, packed full of challenges, not the least lack of power supply.
Oh, God. That has to come in somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yes. Now, what is your background? You were talking about from a container supervising the building of the plant, installing machinery. What's your background?
Actually, I was going to add that it seems like you were CEO of an idea, which then crystallized into a company and to this big business. Yes.
Well, I can only say that through all this experience that I've gone through, I have almost become a certified engineer, a project manager. It's just that I need to do the certification.
So what did you study?
But I came in, first of all, I have a degree in agriculture. That's how I started. And after doing some work at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, which regrettably I didn't find to be satisfying or rewarding, I decided to become a chartered accountant. So I worked with the firm of Coopers & Lybrand. There I trained to become a chartered accountant. Stayed on in the management consulting unit as a management consultant. And then I was ready to move out. I was the financial controller, then finance director of Hagemeyer Nigeria PLC. Today is known as D.N. Mayer. So at D.N. Mayer as well, I think I also took them to the capital market, where we borrowed, we went into redeemable.
They make paints.
They
so
make
you went
paints.
from making paints to making flour, making noodles.
No, not flour noodles. They were making paints. Well, I will tell you about the noodles experience. At D.N. Mayer, then we were known as Hagemeyer, we were making paints. But we were also doing some general merchandising. So we could sell whatever was available just to augment the business of manufacturing. It was at that time that Hagemeyer came into the business of selling noodles. And we are importing noodles from the Far East. It will be of great coincidence if I would tell you that our biggest competitor in the noodle business, I don't like to mention their name. We at Hagemeyer were the very first to bring that brand to Nigeria. Not only to bring the brand, to bring noodle as a food to Nigeria. And this came right into my hands at that time at Hagemeyer Nigeria PLC. So we did that for a while. And that was still ongoing when I left to join Honeywell. So it is of great interest to note that then again in Honeywell flour mills, we came into the business of noodles production. And then I had to now face the product that I midwifed into Nigeria.
So you went there with a good knowledge of the market, of the noodles market.
Good knowledge of the product and of the market. And I still meet some of the promoters of the other brand. I will not mention their name because
no, we shall not mention their name, but we all know who they are.
We know who they are.
So what would be, you spent so many years doing this and you've done it almost from nothing and built it into a PLC that is doing very well in the stock market. What would be the kind of legacy that you will say you're leaving for whoever comes into your shoes, because they'll be quite large now?
Yeah. Well, I must say that it's very, very hard work. Very, very hard work. We took it as our work, and indeed it is our work. And we put everything into it, all the hours. What I'm glad to leave behind is the fact that we have a culture that only the best is good enough. And across everything we do, whether with regard to staff, whether with regard to production, whether with regard to customer relations, everything is the best that you can find in the industry. I'm also glad to say that if you look at the manufacturing sector today, and indeed the private sector, Honeywell flour mills have one of the best human resource people that you can find, whether in the area of finance, production, marketing. They're very, very good people.
Well, interestingly enough, I'm sorry to interject, Ibrahim Garba on Twitter says, is there fairness and openness in Honeywell flour mills recruitment policy?
There is indeed. If you're going for the best that you can find, if you want the best people to join the business, then you had better be open, you had better be fair. Otherwise, any CEO or management that is just recruiting in an unfair and unopen manner is just really undoing itself. Because you need good people to support you. And a CEO is as good as the team that he puts around him. Therefore, it has become a policy, and I'm glad that that is something that has endured, and my successors will are taking over. I've already imbibed the concept of good people to support the operation.
We can't let you go without asking you what your thoughts are about the national conference, and that will be the last question. What are your thoughts on the national conference?
Well, there have been so many agitations in Nigeria about equity, fairness, good governance, and so on and so forth. I must say that if you look at it, some of it may also have come from politicians who have their own agenda. But really, I believe that those questions need looking into, provided that we're sincere about the objectives. The only concern that I have is that whatever the National Conference comes to agree upon, we still have the National Assembly that is sitting there with all the empowerment to legislate and with all the empowerment to refuse to legislate on anything that the National Conference would have decided upon.
Yeah.
So you're wondering whether this is going to come to any real fruition at the end of the day, and whether finally it's just not going to be a distraction to keep the peace in the meantime so that everything is quiet politically. If at the end of the day you're not going to have implementation, I'm just wondering. But it is my sincere hope that it leads us to answers for many of the things that have agitated our minds. But above all, my personal belief is that it's not the conference, it's not what you come upon, it is really the human being. The Nigerian constitution is great. If you compare with other constitutions, it is just as good. Our problem has been implementation. Our problem is with the people. Our problem is with the agenda behind the actions. I think that in spite of that, we need how shall I put it? We need a new cultural identification for the Nigerian, for the entire people, starting from the junior ones. We need to imbibe new values. We all need to be different. If we're different people, if we imbibe good values, if we face work with the right objective, then the Nigeria can achieve much.
Indeed,
But, yeah.
indeed. Thank you very much. The outgoing CEO of Honeywell Flour Mills, Mr. Babatunde Folaranmi Odunayo. Thank you very much for
Thank
that
you very
very
much.
interesting conversation.
Thank you very much for the privilege of being here. Thank you.
Sunrise will return momentarily with yet another interesting conversation. Make sure you're part of it.